Hello, and welcome to the first episode of The Rambling Non-Radicals. I am Nate, and with me here is Cody.
What's up, everyone? How are you, Nate?
I'm doing all right. Another day, another couple dollars. How about yourself?
I can't complain too much. Just ready to get this show on the road.
Ain't that the truth? Well, before we do that, you want to explain to our listeners just what kind of podcast we aim to be here?
Sure. So here at the Rambling Non-Radicals, we're going to talk about a lot of things, current events, politics, some random things thrown in there, maybe some sports, something like that. I think that one of the things that's going to help us differ from other podcasts that you may listen to is we're just, normal people. We don't have any degrees. We don't have anything crazy going on. I think that we kind of have like a balanced point of view. We may lean a little bit right, but we're definitely not radical, as the title of the show says.
That's very true. And also, we do ramble and go on maybe a little bit of rants. So there's the first half of that. Like you said, we're normal people. Although, like you mentioned, we don't have any degrees. That might not even be normal at this point in time, but I still think we're in the slight majority. Like Cody said, we're going to do some normal people views of things. We're going to talk about current events, politics, but today we're going to stick to something that's been in the news for it usually pops up in big things, but it's been at the forefront for about the last month and a half, and that's gun violence. And we're probably going to get into a little bit of Christian Judeo values and see how that all ties in. But before that, Cody, you want to talk about a little bit more on how you and I perhaps know each other?
Yeah, for sure. So, we go back to, I believe it was 2013 in the Republic of Korea, or South Korea for other people.
Hey.
We met in the military. We were both in the Army, and then we, went our separate ways after we went to different duty stations. Met back up in Afghanistan. And then after getting back from deployment from Afghanistan, shortly thereafter, I PCS'd or transferred stations to your duty station, where we kind of linked up again. We really didn't know each other too well while we were in Korea. However, we did have mutual acquaintances. We have, for the most part, similar views. I think we differ in some things on minor issues, I think. But you'll find that out later with the show, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And to tie in two of the things, like you mentioned, we are veterans, but I think you and I both don't adhere to a lot of the stereotypical veteran viewpoints. And I think that's also another cool little thing about this podcast that, oh man, these are two veterans of the Army. They must be, crazy gun-loving, no education people. But I think that's not exactly the truth.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I like my guns, but I'm definitely not what I would call a gun nut or a far right person in general. I would say I'm very much more middle of the road, except I kind of fall a little bit right of center.
That sounds good to me. Well, I think we've hit the intro as well as we can, and perhaps we can send it over to our first sponsor. Just kidding. This is our first episode. Nobody even cares about us. All right.
Trying to throw in that funny bit.
Yeah, well, got to keep them on their toes. All right. So, Cody, you want to perhaps, quote unquote, take the floor here with our first talking point, the giant subject of gun violence, wherever you want to take that.
Yeah. So gun violence. Obviously, anybody that is not living in a cave or under a rock or something has been hearing this a lot lately. A lot of people will know of the whole March for Our Lives thing that just went down. Obviously, the Parkland shooting is the kind of the key thing that kicked that off. However, I think a lot of the mainstream media has been skewing the numbers, as well as a lot of different organizations in general.
Hmm.
And these kids that sponsor the March for Our Lives don't really know the exact numbers, and instead they're basing their stuff off of emotion rather than facts, which
Right.
I think is a little bit of a bad thing whenever you're trying to come up with new policies and regulations and things of that nature.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that a lot of people actually don't think of, and that I don't think having sympathy or empathy in your policy decision is necessarily a bad thing. But when you involve policy based off of emotion, I think that's when we can get into uh, issues that perhaps aren't the best policy decisions.
Yeah, yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah. And then you mentioned perhaps you didn't mention like so the age per se, but I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate. Do you want to go more into how these 16, 17-year-olds and how we've kind of merged into somehow them being the know all be all on what our perhaps country should be doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because if you look at it and listen to a lot of the people, they come on these talk shows and they talk about that how they're the experts because they've went through it. They've had AR-15s or whatever pointed at them and shot at them, but an average person gets in a car wreck, they don't claim to be now an automotive crash safety expert, and don't start making suggestions to policymakers on how to make that better. Um,
Absolutely. You and I do not make policy on Department of Defense decisions in Afghanistan.
I mean, although if they want to take some of my suggestions, I would be more than happy to
I
give them.
mean, yeah, I don't know how they haven't asked us. What kind of baloney is that? But yeah, I think that is there's this weird thing going on with people who are touting all these Parkland survivors, and this isn't. I'm not here to say that just because they're young they don't have a valued opinion. I think it's great that they do have an opinion, but and also to say that just because you went through a tragedy, like you mentioned, does not mean you're, the wisest voice in the bunch. But also, I think the biggest thing is a slight hypocrisy, which I think you might know about me. I despise hypocrisy quite a bit. And there's this weird thing that, like you mentioned, the media is kind of touting out a lot of these students out here, and a lot of like Gen Xers and people who are, in their 30s and 40s saying, you know what, my generation did suck, but thank God we have all these millennials. But at the same time, they're the same people who are making fun of us crazy millennials and, high schoolers for being quote unquote snowflakes and stuff like that. So it's either you make fun of us for not getting off our parents' insurance by age 27, or apparently we're, should be setting policy for the entire country at age 17.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of seems funny to me because, we sit there and we tout these 17-year-olds as like experts, but yet we don't allow them to vote. We don't allow them to drink. We don't allow them to basically make any decisions for themselves because they haven't developed to that point yet. And I know I did. I made terrible decisions as an 18-year-old or 17-year-old, and looking back now I'm like, man, and my views on like politics and everything else has morphed so much since then that I just don't understand how people don't see that and how they are taking this as the value that, or putting this on the value level that they are, because like I know each one of them did the same thing, and I know none of their viewpoints are exactly the same as they were back then either. So the only thing that I can come up with is that they're using it for their political gain.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that 100%. Like, I don't want to like reiterate and hit dead horses and stuff like that, but yeah, I think it's weird how there's just this somewhat double standard, but as well. So did you want to get into any, specific stats that perhaps are being touted by more people on the gun control side? And then perhaps I'll play a little devil's advocate about something I saw posted on Facebook today. But I think, I think that's good. Keep things interesting. I know, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I love is that they talk about the AR-15s, or assault rifles, as they like to call them, even though that's not what AR stands for.
Right.
They like to tout that this is the weapon of choice, which, to be fair, it is for like mass shootings, I suppose. However, they always have handguns and things of that nature with them as well.
But yeah, the worst school shooting of all time is still Virginia Tech, right? And that was just with pistols. So, but obviously, I can cherry pick. Just gotta have some conflict here.
Well, and so the thing is that yes, mass shootings are terrible, but they are not the norm, should I say? Even though it seems like they are. So in 2013, there was just over 12,000 murders. And of those 12,000 murders, the total murders by rifle, that would include the quote-unquote assault rifle, is only 285, which is only 2% of the murders. Now, the issue is that they're going to sit there and say, oh, there wasn't just 12,000 murders or whatever, because they're going to throw in suicide numbers.
Right, and I think it's good. I understand what you're saying, but the 12,000 murders is 12,000 murders or homicides from firearms, not just 12,000 total, because I think the U.S. has quite a bit more than...
Actually, no, it's not. It's legitimately murders because it's also totaled in with knives and cutting objects and things of that nature.
Well, look at that. I'm an idiot.
Yeah. So it seems like that is way higher. Now, gun violence and injuries is not counted in that total. That is just people that died from the injuries.
Right. Very interesting. But that big thing you always see touted off by the March for Our Lives is the crazy thing that there's like the firearm numbers. I think it's like 36,000. Let's see if I can at least see my notes here. Oh yeah, 36,000 gun deaths over, per year in the United States, and tying into what you just said, 13,000 of them were from homicide. So 36,000 gun deaths. That's a lot, but only, and I don't want to say only is a good thing, but only 36,000 or only 13,000 of the 36 were, from homicide. So that means 23,000. I don't want to say we're 100% from suicide because you can lump in accidental discharges and stuff like that. But I just think when people present these stats as 36,000 murders, gun deaths, 36,000 lives on the hands of every single law-abiding gun owner, it really drives a wedge in America, which I think is usually the norm now on any policy. So, we're at that point.
Yeah, and I looked at on the CDC webpage, and they say that self-harm is listed at around 44,000 a year, or 34 to 44. Can't remember which of the two, but it's a lot.
Yeah, that is quite a bit. All right. Any other huge points you want to hit, at least from numbers-wise? We can move into more, maybe the March for Our Lives or that New York Times article by the former Justice of the Supreme Court, if you want. It's all up to you right now. I'll let you drive the ship.
Oh, yeah, old John Paul Stevens talking about wanting to repeal the second, or maybe not saying that he wants to repeal the second, but talking about how it may be a good place to start.
The title of his op-ed was Repeal the Second Amendment.
Yeah. Look, I am not one to say that. I believe in the Constitution. Obviously it is an old document and it needs to be modified at time to time to be updated with the times. Mm-hmm. However, I think that repealing the second would be a huge mistake. One, because trying to implement anything as a policy to put in place of it would take so long because obviously Congress doesn't move very fast. And so whenever you do that, you're also going to rile up the pro-second and anti-second, so you're going to create a huge, I would almost say that it would potentially be a riot situation by even trying to introduce that.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about how slow Congress can move. what I want to hit on that, I mean, let's just say, okay, 100%, let's just let's just repeal the Second Amendment. Uh, I don't think a lot of people understand what needs to be done to actually pass an amendment in the United States. I think it's something like 75% of like state legislators need to approve this, and this is all coming off of the 2016 elections when you know state gubernatorial houses have been held by like 30 something, or pretty much the most Republicans since like 1928 or something like that. So it gets a little crazy when people think, yeah, we should just do that. It's like, well, it's a lot harder than you.
Yeah, they play it off as if it's like this easy thing just to go changing, the Constitution.
Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Both houses of Congress must adopt a proposed amendment with 2/3 vote. So it's not just a simple majority. It's 2/3. So Convention of the States, duty called by Congress, and then 3/4, so 75%, which would be, I can't do math, but 30 something states, 36, 37 states maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, because 37 would be 74. So yeah, 37, 38 states would have to, state legislators must ratify, which think of all those states that are red during the Electoral College and think you can do that. So
yeah, I mean, I think the funny thing is that they don't realize, or whenever I say they, I mean the Democratic voters / leftists that are talking about gun reform. I don't think that they really take that into consideration. I mean, they won the popular vote in this election cycle, but they didn't actually get the Electoral College votes, which is a reason because of the fact that they won all the metropolitans, but not all the states.
Essentially, yeah. Pretty interesting points. So I'll perhaps take a little bit of a sidetrack here, and I'm going to do I'm personally going to do something that I don't like when other people do. That's just what I'm going to do it. If you don't like it, sue me, or don't, please. I'm poor. But anyway, what I'm going to do is try and, use the talking points of perhaps more of the left's point of view on the banning of firearms and comparing it to other countries, which I despise. I don't like when people try to compare Scandinavian countries when they're talking about the pros of socialism to the United States. And I don't like when people just do that to begin with, because the United States is a very, 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 very unique and diverse country. But I'm going to do it anyway.
I mean, yeah, it sounds good. I mean, you mean you can't compare, a bunch of countries that are the size, or like you take the whole of Europe and put it into basically Texas for the most part.
Yeah. Or how about this? People are like, you know what? Denmark has some really great socialist programs. I don't know how we can be them. Dude, that's like making New York City their own country. Like New York City minus Harlem, their own country.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a funny thing to me. It's like, it's super easy to implement things in small batches and hope they turn out well.
Not only are you small geographically, you're small population-wise, and you're also small
demographics-wise.
When you think of a Dane, what do you think of? Like, come on, man.
What? You mean they're not super, super diverse over there? And
yeah, they don't have this weird hippie-infused / Texas city of Austin, Texas. They don't have crazy people and Omaha, Nebraska, when there's also people in San Francisco and New York who essentially vote the same, but they also have very different values because they live 3,500 miles apart.
Yeah, it's crazy that they're that they would have different views, even though they're slightly similar in their way.
Yeah. So so there's our, and we should have like a rambling counter. I think that might be our. I don't want to count that a full ramble.
Just put it on the YouTube clip. Just keep ticker.
One have a little comment like this had nothing to do with anything. Anyway, back to what I was going to try and do, and something I don't like doing anyway. And people would be like, well, why would you do this if you're going to fight it? Like, well, essentially there's a larger point that I'm trying to make. But here it is. So, we'll start with the UK's pretty much ban on almost all firearms, excluding like collectibles from like 1744 and just cool little like firearms firearms that way, but they essentially banned pistols on top of, obviously, quote-unquote, assault rifles back in 1997. And just looking at, like, UN crime data, the rate, I'm going to start at 1995, per 100,000 people, this is intentional homicide, was at 1.6, and then 1.5, 1.5 in 96 and 97. That was when the gun ban happened. And then after that went to 1.6, 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, 2.1, 1.8, up to 2003. So
for the most part, you're seeing a trend upwards with a slight, every now and again, a little dip, which is going to happen.
Right. And then the thing I'm looking at, the UN data, for the United Kingdom, for some reason, it only goes up to 2009. But it gets down to 1.2, which, okay, is definitely an improvement from the 1.6 pre-gun ban. But before I get to the United States, I'm going to tie in also a very big talking point for gun bans, and that's Australia. You know, they had that mass shooting in 1996 that essentially triggered, pun intended, sure, we'll go with it, that triggered the gun buyback program pretty much all across the country, which didn't even get all of them to begin with. But in 95, their intentional homicide rate, per the UN as well, back in 1995 was 1.8, and then the gun ban happened in 1996. It went to 1.7, 1.7, 1.5, 1.8, 1.6, and then 6.665. It's now down, at least to 2010. The stat only goes up to 2010. It's now just is 1, so 1.0 per 100,000 people. So, yeah, okay, it's gone down, not a crazy significant amount. And then you also have to remember that Australia and the UK are, like I mentioned before, completely different countries than the United States. You know, but then you look at the United States numbers of those times on how much, like, you know, homicides have also gone down, and it's all very comparable to those two countries.
Yeah, so, I think that's the thing that people like to overlook, because they like to use statistics in their own way, and which is why I don't like statistics in general, as you well know, because you can modify them to basically fit whatever you deem necessary.
Right.
But overall, the trend in the U.S. has been fairly down, on the downhill slide as far as violent crimes is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's not like there's this craziness going on that only happens in America because we have so many guns, which is, you know, upwards of 300 million. So,
yeah, and I think a lot of people, they like to take all these other things and they're like, you know, the U.S. is like number 3 in violence. Okay, well, where are we in like population size and things of that, and who has the most large cities? Because guess what? That's where most of those violent the crimes happen. That's where most of the gun violence happens, is in these large metropolitan areas.
Absolutely. So kind of tying a little bit more into there, and that's you know, just the fact that, you know, whether they like it or not, Australia and the UK don't share massive borders like what you do. You know, to the south, there's, you know, the 2,000 and some change mile long border with Mexico, and although I don't want to step on anybody's toes, Mexico obviously is not like a gleaming light of, you know, safety and perfect life. And, you know, not to make fun of the Canadians up to the north, but, you know, that's also a very large border. So it's not like, you know, we have this, you know, Australia is literally an island.
Yeah.
Pretty tough to smuggle things when you can get punched in, you know, by a kangaroo as soon as you finished your 10-day cruise to Australia. So,
yep, not jacking with the kangaroos.
Yeah, you don't want to mess around with them. So that was kind of where I go with that. And also, I think, I don't know if we're ready to transition into the second part, but I think a large portion of the issues that we have in America with gun violence don't necessarily stem from guns, heaven forbid, but more of a societal problem, even though a lot of people will say, both on the left and the right, that we have a mental health issue. And I think this is where you and I may differ a little bit, in that I think you lean a little bit more towards mental health, and I think I lean a little bit more towards societal, into a transition of mental health due to the lack of perhaps values in this country. And we'll get into a little bit more of our personal and historical beliefs, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do fall more towards the fact that I believe it's a mental health problem that we have in the country, just based off the fact that you look at how many people that are saying that they have depression in modern times, and if you look at the fact of how many suicides are happening, uh, to me that makes it seem like they have no other way in their mind of dealing with their problems, and they think they have nothing else left to give, that this is the solution. And so that's why I think they tie into the fact of what's going down with the gun violence. And my personal opinion is if you're able to kill someone in cold blood, that's innocent, that you don't have like a vendetta against for any reason, then you have something mentally wrong in your head to be able to do such a thing. And that's just my personal opinion. I know I've had debates with people that come out and say that, oh, that's just not, right to sit there and mental disorders do not make you violent. And that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not saying just because you have a mental disorder that you're automatically a violent or have violent tendencies. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I think that there is something to be said that we don't know a whole lot about the human brain, and that's constantly continuing. But I think that if you look at the suicide rates and look at how many people are claiming to have like depression and things of that nature, that's why I kind of draw the conclusion that a lot of this is mental.
All right, I think you made some good points. I'll remember all that, but I promised I would be devil's advocate for people on the left because whatever. But we talked about how people from the left will spew the 36,000 gun deaths, even though a lot of those are suicides, negligent discharges. I've seen a couple of memes on Facebook, but I saw one that was just as unfair as starting off unfair statistics. There's this one meme, and that's David Hogg being like, generations before us don't know what it's like to be shot by ARs, and somebody said,
Yeah, I saw this.
And the bottom one was cool story, bro, and it's essentially, it's not quite D-Day, but it's definitely a World War II invasion. Well, yeah, okay. I don't know why we're comparing ourselves to
a war in another country.
A war in another country. These people either were drafted or signed up for a war, so
they were military personnel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally different thing.
Totally different. So yes, it's fair. So David Hogg was right. He was half right. Other generations do know what it's like to go up against ARs, but they probably also didn't know what it's like to be in high school, flirting with your potential prom date that's really just going to dump you and leave you all sad.
But I think if I remember right, which I don't have the stats right in front of me, but if I remember right, I saw that school shootings are actually going down. So yes. In reality, that other generations would have dealt with it.
Right. Right. I think I can actually pull up a quick link because I think one of my friends that I follow on Twitter has it actually linked on school shootings have been going down since the 90s.
What is it, like a constant retweet that he just posts every day?
Oh, no, he pinned it.
Okay.
So, yeah. Essentially, incidents per year. I'm not going to go into it too far, but it's from northeastern.edu. So if you want to feel the people up in Boston are doing good, schools are safer than they were in the 90s, and school shootings are not as common than they used to be. Researchers say, I'm not going to bore you with a lot of statistics, which I know might null and void what I just said, but trust me, it's out there. Like we said, going big picture here, we're trying not to be, bore you with statistics. We do have real lives. We do have an actual job out of this. We do have to, support our family and can't just be reading studies for 13 hours a day.
Yep, that's definitely true. And also to caveat on that, I also saw a similar thing. I know that it was on NPR. So if that tells you anything, NPR is left leaning for those that don't know, for the most part.
Right.
But
so, getting back to mental health versus my thing of more of a societal and value issue that may lead to more of a mental health and we're gonna call this the transition point, whether it's a solid one or not. But and that's we're gonna try to get into Christian Judeo values, which might not have a concrete definition and might not be known throughout the entire Western world. I think it's more of an American saying. It's with our laws and our culture and how we've developed as a country. But essentially, what I think the rudimentary definition of it is dignity of human life, adherence to the Abrahamic covenant, common decency, and support of traditional family values. I think I want to personally focus on the first and the last, and that's the dignity of human life and support of traditional family values. And perhaps we can delve more into just having personal responsibility and leaning more on yourself and your actual neighbors instead of perhaps government overreach and things like that, because they're not always going to be the solution to all your problems. So from that, if I can once again try to make this into a pretty bow, if I will, just as like a big overarching statement, I think the the decrease in children born to parents who are actually married and cohabitating, the decrease in American culture that has been happening decade after decade, I think is a pretty big indicator on why perhaps we have a society problem that then leads to this feeling of hopelessness. And, the only way out is to either become infamous for a school shooting or a suicide, is the fact that a lot of children, especially in the black community, I'm not saying the black community is tied to school shootings or anything like that, because actually, most of them are actual just, young white dudes.
The old white dudes.
Damn white dudes, I know. It should be pointed out for anybody who cannot see us. Cody and I are both white. So, holy crap.
Yep.
But I think that is this giant thing. I think it can be more of like a chicken and egg type thing, is, the black community hindered by the fact that they have high single parent rates, or does the black community have high single parent rates because of systemic racism? And I think it was actually the former. I feel like I've been talking for a few minutes without even listening to you, Cody. So if you want to...
No, you're good. Keep on rolling.
In the right direction. Point me in the right direction.
No, I mean, so before we keep going down this track...
number 2? Can I count that as 2?
That's 2, yeah.
Getting it up.
So the only thing is, so your definition of Christian Judeo values, or Judeo-Christian, depending on who you're talking to,
right.
I would agree with you that you need to focus on the first and last part, that dignity of human life and support of traditional family values. The only thing that I really kind of disagree with is the adherence to Abrahamic covenant, which you well know based off of my upbringing in East Texas.
Can we do a small ramble number 3 and we get into the of your upbringing in East Texas?
Yeah, so those who obviously don't know us, I grew up...
What movie is that? What movie is it doing banjos?
Oh God! Now you're going to bring it up to me, and I'm going
Isn't that like your home video?
Isn't it Deliverance? Is that?
It is Deliverance. It reminds me of Archer, which just got taken off Netflix. So.
Oh man.
What a big...
But
I'm suffering.
So I grew up in East Texas, obviously down in the Bible Belt. There's a church on every corner, and even though popular belief would have you think down there that if you're a Christian, you're being attacked, that is not true at all, because the vast majority are Christian, and if you're not Christian, look out, because they're not going to look at you too kindly, especially if you're open about it. So I grew up
Southern hospitality, my butt.
Well, they are, as long as they don't know your personal beliefs. So they will treat you very kindly until you start talking something that is against what they believe.
Of course.
As it goes. But I grew up, going to church all the time. Up until the Army, my views were very much so Christian, conservative. got into the Army, and my whole outlook on things basically did a 180 on politics, uh, on religion, on everything, and so that's kind of where I've come, and that's now where I'm kind of like in the center, more so now, and religiously, I mean, even though I don't really like using the term atheist because the movement of atheists can sometimes uh, be one of those kind of like leftists, like like far left, like it's got a negative connotation assigned to it.
Right. Right.
So while I am an atheist, I don't agree with the way that they go about attacking religion in general.
Right. I think that's a good point. And if I'm gonna give my thing, and then we can get back to the actual discussion at hand. So I did not grow up in the Bible Belt. I grew up in the Rust Belt.
Oh, the old belts.
I know, right? Everybody's got a belt nowadays. But I also, so I did grow up in a Catholic household, and went to church, but never it was like the biggest thing. Believer into it, like you, joined the Army, and perhaps even went further towards the spectrum of non-believer. And now here I am. I don't think I am a quote unquote believer in anything, but I don't think I'm as non-believer as you. And I don't know if that's a severe fear of us being just this tiny speck on a windshield. That, maybe that depresses me, and I try to tell myself that maybe there is something, and there is this weird higher being. So I always like to use a cop-out of agnostic, but I lean towards more of the yes, there is something agnostic versus the atheist agnostic. So
yeah.
There's that. I've gone through a weird transition over the past year. I don't know what's going on with me, but
well, no, and I mean, I can understand it. Thinking of how small we are, and the perspective of the cosmic universe is so small.
No, yeah, I don't do that kind of stuff. That hurts my head.
Well, see, and that's where I kind of like to go with it. I love to look into that kind of stuff, but I won't go on a religion tangent. I will kind of try to keep it homed in a little bit.
That's fine. We'll do it another episode.
Yeah, but But to tie it back, we'll tie it back around to the values. I think that modern day, we don't necessarily need the religion in the regards of like basically Genesis through the whole thing is verbatim. You should take it with every bit of realism as you should. And I think that more so, if you're going to use religion, you should look at it as like
a compass.
kind of like and
a compass versus a GPS.
Yes, very much so, and take it with the stories that it teaches you. More so than, hey, there's this all-powerful being that is going to smite you.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's where the quote-unquote modern Christian I think leans, is that I don't think they're ignorant to the fact that God nodded his head and was like, "Ba-ba, a snake, ba-ba."
I have to disagree with you on that.
You are disagreeing because.
We're gonna have to take a short
Buffalo.
break. Hold up. It messed up for a good solid minute or two.
Damn.
Okay, so but continue on with where you were.
Fine, perfect, awesome, love it. So I'll start from the start. I think I think that's where the modern Christian perhaps is when they're talking about not taking the Bible word for word and more of a morality / teaching. And I know you from East Texas, but may disagree. But I think the modern Christian is aware that those are for teachings, morality, and that can go more into the average person forgetting that other people have other life experiences than them. And I'm going to go off on ramble number 4 or 5. I lost count, but whatever. Every time I go home, I'm kind of shocked. And by go home, I mean where I grew up. I no longer live there. I'm almost shocked at just like how in a bubble people can be. And, I'm not trying to come off as pretentious or an elitist. The fact that I've, seen the world, I've been to, other countries and talked to other people. The military does that. But you forget that other people grow up in different areas and may have different things. So that was a big learning experience to me when I was 19 or 20, that, not everybody grew up in white suburbia with two parents like I did. And I think that's a huge thing that people need to remember. And I think a lot of people can actually benefit from, because we're in this very interconnected world nowadays with the internet, but also it's almost gone backwards. It's just the fact that no matter what view you have on anything, you can find people who support your view, and you're not challenged. You're not challenged on that view. And I think that's probably the biggest drawback of the internet. Not to talk about, the dark web, but on a day-to-day basis, I think, we have this great thing where we can challenge each other's views, but all we do is essentially surround ourselves with people who say the exact same thing that I'm saying.
Yeah. But, and I mean, I side with you on that, is that, going back home, that was the main thing that really taught me and changed my views, is getting outside of small East Texas and meeting people with other views. Because I never met anyone that wasn't a Christian before that. And to talk about the fact that I don't think that that's the modern Christian view, as what you were saying. Now, secular Judaism is a different story. They definitely believe that it's more so like a compass, and not much literal.
Should we explain this metaphor? Would it be a metaphor or a simile? It'd be a metaphor. What I was talking about with compass and GPS, compass is more of, I will show you the way, but you still have to find it. And GPS is literally saying, you turn freaking left. The store is the store is right there.
It's there. You just missed it.
AKA the literal meaning versus the compass showing you, take this how you will.
Yeah, just giving you a general direction.
There we go.
It's you that needs
just
to decide.
Just went, right over somebody's head.
Yeah, no. But I definitely think that they see it more so as, at least, look, I won't claim to know all Christians. However, from my upbringing in the South to me currently still living in the South, I can tell you that probably 90% of Christians in the South believe in the literal translation of the Bible.
Bonkers.
Yes. So, and that's a whole nother thing that we can get off on another day, but.
Right. All right. So back to, man, that was a long ramble by us. The Rambling Non-Radicals. Break for advertisement number 2. Oh. We don't have those. You notice how I said advertisement? Yeah. That's how Canadians say it, I think.
Yeah. Well, our name definitely fits with the Rambling Non-Radicals. So. Yes.
And to spoil this, we do not have any advertisement. I can't even say it normal now. 1 or 2. So, So,
but hey, if you want to, hit us up.
Come up with fake ones, or that, yeah.
Hit us up. I'm down for being sponsored.
If you make gin, send me gin, and I'll try it live on air. I thoroughly enjoy. I'm having water right now. I'm not gonna drink on camera.
Oh man, yeah. So Dr. Pepper, if you want to send me some Dr. Pepper.
There we go.
But anyways, off of that ramble.
Yes, going back to where we were going. I think like I said, I want to focus on dignity of human life and support of traditional values, and I think these go as close to hand in hand as you can be without being 100% hand in hand. I mentioned just the fact of how many children are now born to parents out of wedlock, and there are countless studies essentially saying that kids need a mom and a dad who are married and have the goal of raising a child. It's just crazy to me. So I think that is obviously the point of the traditional family values, of the values we've been talking about, but also the dignity of human life So I think this was also another chicken and egg thing. Do you not have values, and do you lose the respect? I'm not saying single fathers who perhaps abandon their kids don't have human life respect, but at the same time, are we at the point where it's almost so socially not quote unquote acceptable, but socially understandable, where if you do go up and knock some chick up, it's like, well, I wasn't really trying to do that, so I'm not going to be there for the kid. I might.
Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and abandon that.
Yeah. So
you do you. I'm going to go
yeah,
do me.
and so I mean, so did you lose the values and you now lack the respect? Once again, I'm not saying single fathers don't love their kids even if they don't see them, because I think there's this weird thing that happens once you become a parent that you're like, holy tamale, this is real life, and I would probably die for this kid. But because you are not engaging in the typical nuclear family that Christian Judeo values preach, are we hurting kids in lacking either a strong male figure, and I don't mean to like hurt people's feelings when it comes to LGBTQ or LGBTQZ, but I do believe
Enter
that
in anything else that goes on to the end of that.
Are we back?
Yeah, we're back.
When did we cut out?
We cut out right after I started interrupting you saying add on anything else to the LGBTQZ whatever.
All right, I'll start right back up. Yeah, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I'm just saying you guys add like a new letter every like 6 months or like a year. So I'm not saying you guys aren't real people. I'm just saying there is definitely a difference between men and women, just hormones wise. So when it gets to the fact that I think a child needs a strong male figure with,
or if it makes you feel better, masculine,
whatever, masculine with higher levels of testosterone, would that probably be a male, and masculine doesn't always mean testosterone, but I think a strong masculine figure and a strong feminine figure, there's this balance that I think kids need, and when they don't have that, they run into a lot of problems in society, and be that all those wonderful things, and we can get into how that affects the child as a whole. But I think I've gone on to another Nate mini ramble. If you wanted to add any points that I've talked about.
Yeah. So I mean, to add to that, I mean, you're talking about the fact that a mother and a father, or a feminine and a masculine, whatever you may have, but whenever you're talking about a family, it's obviously better to have two people involved, because whenever two people are involved, they look out for the well-being. You make decisions, compromises. You look out for the child's well-being, and it's not one person that is making these decisions. And so the child kind of grows up more of a balanced life, I would say. And so that's more so what I would say that's really kind of helping kids, because they don't have just one person that is constantly working or constantly doing everything with the child, and then missing out on the whole other aspect of the masculine or feminine side of it.
Right. And I mean, we can harp on how a balance is needed, but there's so many studies that just show that kids with both parents can, live healthier lives physically and psychologically. So, to tie it back into gun violence, but they're likely to do better in school, graduate high school, attend college, which whether you like it or not, not everybody can drop out of high school and become millionaires. And I'm not saying attending college makes you a millionaire, but
Nope.
essentially attending college, graduating high school, all these things that tie back to having two parents in your home, they're all more likely to happen for a child with those two parents. And, so all that equals to, they're less likely to be in poverty, less likely to be in trouble, less likely to drink or have drug problems and stuff like that. And So we can talk about how the balance happens, but also when it literally comes down to, income, a 2017 study came out, and just, adjusting for family size, family income, like I said, adjusting for family size, family income is 73% higher for married women compared to that of unmarried peers. So, if you have a woman who is married versus a single mother or an unmarried parent, the person who's married just is 73% higher. That is just unbelievable. And the same thing goes for married men. They make at least 16,000 per year more than the people who are unmarried.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which I think is, 16. Dude, if somebody gave me a $16,000 pay raise this year,
Hey, and if you want to give me that, that's great. I would take it in a heartbeat again.
Absolutely. And it also goes on, if we're going to get it past marriage and more into the black men side of things, which I think is fair because we're at the point where I think it's 75% of black children are born to single mothers, which is, to me, just absolutely mind-boggling. But at this point, it says black men enjoy a marriage premium of $12,500 in their individual income compared to their single peers. The advantages also apply, for the most part, to men and women who are less educated. For instance, married men with a high school degree or less enjoy a marriage premium of $17,000 compared to the single peers. So even if you were a child who didn't have a, double parent or a parent household and you didn't get your degree, if you want to change the system, if you have a kid and you're married to your baby mama or baby daddy, even then you'll still enjoy a marriage premium up to $17,000, and that to me is just huge.
One thing that I will tack on to this is how long was this study done? Do you know? Like over what time frame?
I could easily find out, hopefully, if by clicking a few links.
Yeah, because that would be something to look up, is to figure out exactly how long this study has been going on. Because obviously, people are going to sit there and say that statistics can be skewed, like me.
Yeah. Yep.
So
that's your thing. Yeah.
Because I'm not exactly one that's very fond of statistics, because you can skew them whichever way you want, and no one will know the difference if they don't look into it.
Well, for the brevity of time, that doesn't make any sense. For the concern, nope, that doesn't make any sense either. For just time concerns, let's just go with that. Every other paragraph is citing statistics going back to the 1970s. Whether the study goes, obviously there's inflation since then and stuff like that, but a lot of these reports are coming back to the 1960s and 1970s.
Still looking back at stuff that's going back 30 to 40 years. So.
Yeah, and that could even perhaps take me to the next point, and that's just slightly backpedaling while also trying to go forward, and that's, excuse me, how much it has, the single parent rate has increased for black children. And I think that is just a huge thing that, isn't really talked about too much, but can be talked about because, like I said earlier, 75% of black kids nowadays are born to single parent households, which I think...
Now, is there a stat to compare to as far as like white versus black?
Yes, I could probably find that out pretty quickly. I do know white and Latino and Asians have grown as well since the 1960s, but not up to like...
Not at quite the level of like 75%, where you're talking where you're talking 3/4 of all births.
Right. So let's see here. 75%. Let me do a quick little click here, if you would let me.
Yep. Sorry for this, folks, but like to have a little.
That's okay. You can edit it out. Okay, so through 2012, 2016, Let's see, African Americans at 76%, Hispanics at 61%, whites at 33%, and Asian residents at 21%. Although
Okay.
this might be skewed to an actual city itself. So hold on before I give you bad information. I might have to give you a whole thing.
If anything, I'll add in down at the bottom in the description the actual amount once we do look up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because modifying this or editing this is a pain because I don't have the software currently. Being as it is the first podcast, so.
If people have come this far, they can wait a couple minutes. You know
And
what I mean?
thank you for lasting this long if you do.
Right? Right. Oh, man. I am not finding it, even though I found it the other day when I found this. But I do know that other races are not as high as 75%. I think they are all below 50, with Hispanics being somewhere near that point.
Yeah.
But like I mentioned, like way previous back, the chicken and the egg. Is there a correlation between black families being broken because of long prolonged racism in America, or are black families now struggling due to the weird degradation of the nuclear family in black culture? And I think it goes to the latter in this point, just because if you look at numbers in every census from 1890 to 1950, black labor force participation rates were on par or higher than whites. In 1950, 72% of black men and 81% of black women were married. Prior to the 1960s, the unemployment rate for black 16 and 17-year-olds was under 10%. And, we just hit this point where black unemployment rate as a whole, I think, just got under 10%. And it was in Trump's State of the Union. And that was when, the Black Caucus didn't even clap at that. And, of non-married
Yeah.
to.
So it cut out again, but we're going to have to figure out why it keeps doing that.
I saw it. Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, back in 1965, 76.4% of black children were born to married women. And now here we are. Being born to actually single mothers. And I think that is a huge indicator of why perhaps so much gun violence is happening in urban areas that have high black populations and such. And, we can get into more causes. I'm not saying, single mothers are the only reason. Urban areas that have black populations may have less education funding, less police presence because of less education funding because of gun violence. It's very hard to pinpoint why each factor in struggling urban areas has occurred, but
I just found, I think the stat, it says it's 30% for whites.
There you go.
And that is by the National Center of Health Statistics.
I'll trust them. They have national in their name, so
that makes it valid.
Yeah. So I don't want to go too far into that. Like I said, I think I've actually covered quite a bit of that. Is there anything else you want to at least stick in for gun violence? Anything we missed? Questions, concerns, comments. What is the other thing they used to say in the Army? Any alibis?
Yeah, any alibis. Yeah, that. Thanks for bringing that one back up.
That should be our saying. Any questions, concerns, comments, any alibis?
No, but just kind of like going off on a, different alley. When you going to come to a soccer game with me?
Okay, you live literally half the time away from Atlanta than I do, so it could be tough. But theoretically,
it's still doable, dude.
that's a long drive.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I agree. It's a long drive. But
How much are tickets? How about this?
It depends. So
I'll go and step up right now.
And some of the fans groups that I'm in, they sell them for non-inflated prices.
What's this team's name? Atlanta what?
United.
Oh, that's such a soccer thing. Come up with the team name.
I hate team names. I really do. I hate them,
Oh,
to be quite honest.
No,
I really am.
You know what I hate? Soccer.
Well, yes, but you like hockey, so you're like a Canadian.
Okay, so here's the thing. I should like soccer because I like hockey, but I don't. But a couple years ago, I told my friend I'd try English Premier League, and I tried. He's an Everton fan. I said, you know what? I'm going to pick a random team that's not like... I understand that Chelsea and Man U, and I don't even know who else, but I know they're like the popular. So I said, nah, forget that. I'm an upstate New York, so I'm a Buffalo fan. Yeah, come at me. Sabres, Bills, let's go. I don't care. But I was like, all right, I'm going to pick a random team. But I couldn't even get into it because there's no playoffs, and that really bothered me.
But
I understand.
You're also trying to watch something that's in a whole different country. Time frames aren't right.
Whatever.
I don't know why you didn't try to go with MLS, which I get it. MLS is not like top quality, but it has your playoffs. It has all that kind of stuff.
Because I started at the most popular league in the world. If it's not La Liga, I actually know quite a bit for not for not knowing. But to me, the fact that there could be a champion of the English Premier League before actually the season's over, I didn't like that. Saturday, April 7th, LAFC, Los Angeles Football Club. I'm assuming.
Yep.
How many tickets? 2. Dude, what? Best value? How about lowest price? $49 each for standing room only. How is this popular?
Dude, so I'm telling you, they sell out that stadium almost every single time. So
that is bonkers.
They've broke the MLS record for now, I think 3 or 4 times with 70-something thousand people in attendance. And that is insane because if you look at MLS attendance overall, I think it sits somewhere at 10,000 average.
Wow.
Yeah, and then on top of that, the average... So they close off the top section for most of the matches in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Makes sense.
But their average attendance is 44,000 as opposed to 10,000 for the MLS.
Okay, who's the other closest team to where we are?
Orlando? Probably Orlando or Nashville.
Well, Orlando's definitely closer.
But Nashville isn't. Well, Nashville isn't. Well, for me, it's not.
What's Orlando's team?
What'd you say?
Orlando City SC?
Yeah.
Oh, they're much cheaper.
Yeah, because they've got a smaller stadium and it's terrible.
Fair point. All right. I think we've gone on a big enough tangent about soccer. My tangent, and I don't expect you to respond to this, but the Sabres are tanking for last place again. So let's go. Let's lose. Let's do this. Any other final thoughts?
Nope. Hockey sucks. It's Canadian, but that's it. I'll leave it at that.
Fair point.
All right. Well, I think that that's all we got, and I've enjoyed my time. If you are still around in this podcast, if you want to go and like and subscribe on our page, if you go to facebook.com/theramblingnonradicals, you will find our page, and that's probably easier than going and looking us up on YouTube because obviously we don't have that many followers yet, so it's going to be kind of hard to navigate.
Truth. And if you want to give us a suggestion, if you want to just suggestion to talk about or a question you want to pose to us about anything, whether that be politics, military, current affairs, my favorite kind of drink, Cody's favorite kind of drink, whatever, make sure you send us that. You can either do it on the Facebook page or the Rambling Non-Radicals at Gmail. Mind you, there's a big the in front of Rambling. It's not just Rambling, it's the Rambling Non-Radicals.
Yep, we're the only ones.
Yeah. All right.
All right, well.
Until next time.
Yep, signing out.
See ya.